Welcome to Fabric Monday. Today we'll talk about the integration between Fabric and Azure Data Factory. Before Fabric, we used Azure Data Factory as a no-code, low-code solution in Azure to build pipelines, to ingest data inside our systems. In this way, it's natural that we need to have an integration between both. We need to integrate our new Fabric systems with our old Azure Data Factory systems. There may be many reasons to make this integration. Let's talk about them. We have two integration methods, two methods to integrate Azure Data Factory and Fabric. One is an execution pipeline. From a Fabric pipeline, we can execute a Data Factory pipeline. So, a simple pipeline execution. We trigger a Data Factory pipeline. Or the second method, we can mount an entire Azure Data Factory inside the Microsoft Fabric. Let's analyze and understand both methods. Let's see how these methods work. Here I'm on Azure. In Azure I have a SQL database. I have a data factory, and this data factory transfers information from this SQL database to a storage account, one specific folder inside the storage account. This is a very simple example, only to illustrate the integration with Fabric. Here I have a pipeline in Microsoft Fabric, and the InvokePipeline is marked as preview. InvokePipeline is something so usual. Why it's marked as preview? Because this activity got new features, and one of the new features this activity got is to call an Azure Data Factory pipeline. We can use the InvokePipeline to call a Data Factory pipeline. So we add the InvokePipeline to our Microsoft Fabric pipeline. Settings. In the settings, we can choose if we are calling a Fabric pipeline, an Azure Data Factory pipeline, or even a Synapse pipeline. We could be integrating with Synapse Data Factory. I will choose an Azure Data Factory pipeline. Connection, I need to make a connection with the Azure Data Factory pipeline. I click in More, and I choose Azure Data Factory. Now I need to provide the information about my Azure Data Factory. Mind that it asks for the subscription ID, resource group name, data factory name. It doesn't ask for a tenant ID. The pipeline needs to be in the same tenant which I'm using. I'll fill these values, subscription ID, resource group name, and data factory name. And by doing so, I'm creating a new connection. I'm creating a connection to this Azure Data Factory. This connection will be saved in Power BI Connections. Let's call this connection DF Integration Connection. This will be the name of the connection. And they'll ask to connect. That's it, that connection is created. We can take a look on the list of connections, how this connection will appear in the list of connections. Here, mine the DF integration connection for Azure Data Factory, and we can manage these connections as many others, like sharing with other users. For example, we have a video in Fabric Monday about connection sharing and how important it is. You can take a look on it later. Back to the pipeline, let's select the Data Factory pipeline, which I will execute, transfer orders. If this pipeline required any parameter, I could pass the parameter to the pipeline. Here, there would be no problem to pass the parameter to the pipeline, but it doesn't require any parameter. In this way, all set, I can save my pipeline and execute. That's it. The execution was a success. And I have the files in the storage account. Let's take a look on the storage account. Let's make a refresh. There it is. The Data Factory pipeline transferred the files to the storage account. And the Data Factory pipeline was triggered by a Fabric pipeline. This is only an example. There are many variations of what we could do in this scenario. But I could, for example, have a shortcut to this Azure Blob Storage, or I could be triggering another ingestion on Fabric side when the files arrive in this storage, for example. There are many possibilities about what we can do in this example. Back to Microsoft Fabric, let's take a look on the second option, the mount of Data Factory. This second option requires administrative permission. You can only make a mount if you have administrative permission for this. So we need to go to admin portal and look for the permission to enable ADF mount items. Only if this option is enabled, we can really mount a Data Factory. In this case, it's enabled, so I can mount a Data Factory. How I do so? I create a new item and look for Data Factory. Azure Data Factory. The amount of Data Factories in Fabric is also in preview. Let's select, and it's showing to me the Data Factories which I have in the same tenant. Okay, and it's done. The Data Factory is mounted. What does it mean? Now we have an object inside our workspace which is called Azure Data Factory. What does this mean? This means that I can click on this object and I have the entire Data Factory execution environment inside Microsoft Fabric. In this situation, in this scenario, I can continue developing using Data Factory or giving maintenance to Data Factory items without leaving Fabric. From inside Fabric, I continue giving maintenance to Data Factory items. So you can see, for example, the source of my pipeline, Data Factory pipeline, I mean. Let's take a look on the PowerPoints again. Let's talk about the integration methods again. When we should use each one of these integration methods. We have the execute pipeline. When we should use it? Well, we should use it for single executions and for integration with external systems. When what we want is just a single execution with something that is in Azure Data Factory, we can use the execute pipeline. For example, maybe the teams are not even the same. Maybe there are two data engineering teams, one working with Fabric, another one working with Azure Data Factory. So one can provide to another a pipeline to be executed, and this can create an integration between different systems, but it's one case isolated. Now, the mount. The mount is for a different scenario. The mount is when we need the integration of the entire development scenario. Usually, we would like to use the mount when our intention is to make a migration from Azure Data Factory to Fabric. The point is, why would we build everything again? Why would we build again something which is already working? In this way, we can make a migration to the Fabric environment, but continue making maintenance to the Data Factory resources in Azure Data Factory. We create new resources in Fabric and continue giving maintenance to Data Factory. In this way, the productions we make in both environments start working together, and we make a very slightly transition between Data Factory and Fabric. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next week.